Yeah. So as far as positioning, there used to be, well, it's still a phrase. It's just not popular anymore. What's the most important, most important things in wrestling? Position, 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 or positioning, positioning. A lot of it comes down to just holding position. So we like to say positioning does three things. It makes you faster and stronger and limits what your opponent can do to you. Because at the end of the day, I'm an athlete, right? So you can take a race car engine and put it in a minivan, but it won't be able to go around the racetrack very well. You put the minivan engine in the race car, the NASCAR is still going to win. Why? Because it's position. The car is only like 3 foot off the ground. It's really wide. It's got wide tires. It's, there's no wind drag. I mean, there's like a quarter of an inch between the bottom of the vehicle and the pavement. So positioning makes you faster. How about if you and I are going to race, Steve, and let's pretend I'm a lot faster than you, and I'm standing there with my hands on my hips looking to over my left with my feet crossed, and you're down in a track runner stance like in the starting blocks. You're probably going to win because why? You started in better position. So positioning makes you faster. Okay, does positioning make you stronger? Yes. Just go to the weight room and try to squat, 200 pounds. Put 200 pounds on your back, and then put your feet 2 inches apart, and then drop your chin to your sternum, and then do some squats. You're going to hurt yourself, and you're not going to be able to pick up much weight. And I'm like, hey, what if I told you can get 5 times, or probably about 50 times stronger just by making a couple of adjustments? And you'd say, oh man, please show me how to do this. And I'm like, okay, get your feet wide, lock in your core with a little pelvic tilt, chin to the sky. I mean, all this stuff, right? Throw your chest out. I mean, I teach you to squat, in more of a linear motion. And you're like, wow, Nick, thank you. You're really smart. And I'm like, yeah, I just know a little bit about positioning. So there's positioning in weightlifting. So does positioning make you stronger? Certainly it does. Position makes you faster. And in wrestling, positioning limits what your opponent can do to you. Same way in MMA, same way in boxing, same way in jiu-jitsu. So I am sure that when you're in full guard, there's some things you don't do, right? So there's called position. Now, when you're on your feet in jiu-jitsu, just like wrestling, your stance is your position. So we mostly preach positioning in the sport of wrestling simply because we're giving up points that we should not. So if you're in a jiu-jitsu stance or a wrestling stance, jiu-jitsu on your feet is kind of the same, right? We're in a takedown position. And now takedowns are, I know that the rules, and I believe in ADCC, has changed a little bit, where there's a little bit of an emphasis that's really helping wrestlers, right? And so I think the takedown game is getting much more important. So positioning in jiu-jitsu and MMA would be a little bit different, because you can punch me, you can kick me with, side kicks and straight kicks, and you can get my legs. And I need to be able to block, punch, strike, kick, and score takedowns on you too. That's the reason people love that sport, is it's mixed martial arts. It's all in there. So, the concept of positioning for us, we understand that positioning makes you faster and stronger, limits what your opponent can do to you. But it also, when it limits what my opponent can do to me, if I'm in a bad stance on my feet, you're like, I see 32 different ways to take you down, right? But if I'm in a really good stance, we say feet wide, touch a mat, don't let your opponent read your shirt, because in wrestling, we hinge at the waist. We bend over at the waist. We keep our right pec over our right knee. And, I'm blocking with my head, thumbs, and arms, because your first 2 lines of defense are your hands and heads. Your hands and head. So that's really why we worry about positioning in wrestling, is because I teach my athletes, I am okay if you take me down in practice 5 times today, and you fake, I step back, you elbow past me, and by the time I recover, you're in on my legs. And, maybe there's 4 other tremendous setups. and you take me down, I'm just like, dude, this guy's beat my ass. He's better than me. I'm okay with that. But I can't be okay with giving up takedowns because I got out of my stance. I reached. I failed to keep head position from a tie up. I took bad shots and ended up underneath you, and you had a front headlock, and you were able to spin behind me. I can't be happy or okay with getting taken down if it's because of my poor positioning. So from the faster, stronger component, I'm looking at how I can score. But from the limiting what my opponent can do to me, I'm worried about not giving up easy stuff. Because we like to say this, if you have world-class positioning, you can literally go, a close match with anybody in America. Isn't that nice to say, I can go to California, Idaho, Arizona, Florida. I can go to any high school wrestling room, or at the college level, I can go to any college wrestling room, and I can go toe to toe with anybody in this place. That's within 2 years and 8 or 10 pounds of me. That feels pretty good. Now, what happens sometimes it's the mental game is off, but sometimes our positioning is terrible and we get really good at really bad wrestling and we become a scrambler, which is absolutely silly. So then you're like, yay, I beat 2 state champions this week, and everybody patting you on the back. Your dad's talking about how proud he is of his son, right? That's all so exciting. And then Tuesday at a dual meet, you lose to a JV kid. Friday, you lose to nobody. And you're like, he's not consistent. It must be mental. I'm thinking, well, yeah, it is. His head's mentally screwed up now. Last week, he beat 2 state champs, and this week he lost to 2 JV kids. What do you expect? But it's a position-based issue. So sometimes our lack of confidence comes from, dude, if I wrestled like you, I wouldn't be confident either. You really don't deserve to be confident. You don't even have any level of consistency in your wrestling. And, that's something that we preach tremendously. And I will say that, what is it? Almost June 2023. In the past year and a half, the past 2 college recruiting cycles, we've had 26 of our athletes, not our campers, our year-round Purler Wrestling Academy wrestling athletes at high school. 26 of them have signed and committed to wrestle Division I wrestling just in the past year and a half. And that's a record for us. Yeah. And it actually is impressive. And not one of them just moved in from Florida or something. They've been in my room for 8-9 years year round. So it's been tremendous. And I actually made a prediction to the Mizzou coach probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And I said, you wait, we're going to have 30 Division I wrestlers in about 6 years. And, we almost did it. So I predicted all of this because I don't have a life. All I do is coach, and I like it and I love it. And I just know what I know. And it's predictable. But one reason our athletes are so heavily sought after is because they are very consistent. Now, not all of them win the high school national title. I don't think we didn't have one this year. But who cares? Literally, when you go to the national high school tournament, and you have to be a high school state medalist to even get on the tournament bracket, not anybody can go. And there's 262 guys on a bracket, and you finish top 10 or 12 and you don't medal. College coaches are after you because that's pretty damn impressive. So, but one thing is, it's just not this book and the mental game stuff that we teach. It's also all of these things you and I have been talking about for the past 20-something hours in this podcast. And it works, it just works. So your athletes have to focus on positioning because it sucks to get submitted or get taken down when you should not have. It's okay to get submitted or taken down when someone's better. You can almost enjoy that and say, man, that beat my ass, or I can't go with her. She's a savage. And maybe you're going to drive it to the gym and train with her and say, how do you keep doing this? Whatever, I mean, they have these most famous, or at least very high level jiu-jitsu athletes, just like wrestling. We have our favorite takedown, our favorite way to get to our feet on bottom, right? Because your technique game gets smaller as you get better, because you start to hone in on what works for you based upon your personality, your level of athleticism, maybe your level of flexibility, maybe your power, maybe your personality is certain, maybe you're more flexible, maybe you're very tall and lanky, you have a different style on the mat, whether you're in jiu-jitsu or wrestling, than you do a short powerful guy or a lady. So we sometimes master a few techniques and stuff. So it can be cool getting beaten by someone who's just so technically superior to you. So it's certainly nothing to get mad about. But if you get beaten because of your poor mental game, or your poor eating habits, or your poor sleeping habits, or your poor positioning, then you can't put up with that. So that's where we're at.